Disgusting and embarrassing. Guys, I just watched Donovan Edwards go about 80 yards, and now it's getting so bad for Ohio State. They're starting to lose all of their style points. You know, I thought this game was going to be closer. They are getting trounced right now, guys. We're going to talk about it, the whole Ryan Day situation with Ohio State, what happened in this game, and it is really getting ugly for Ryan Day. There is a large percentage of the Ohio State fan base that is calling for him to be fired. Back-to-back losses to Michigan, just totally, completely soft. A lot of the Ohio State fan base was coping. I tried saying, listen, this is a soft coach. This is a soft team, and you've got these unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. You've got the defense with Jim Knowles having a total mental meltdown, the secondary in the second quarter. And guys, this is an absolute joke. It is a blowout now with 3 minutes left in this game. So let's talk about the defense first. We'll start with the defense for Ohio State. Early on, amazing. Literally as perfect as you would want the game to start. You completely shut down their run game. Blake Corum, pretty much what everyone thought, tries to make one cut. He's done. Blake Corum is out. That's a massive advantage, you would think, for Ohio State. Michigan's doing nothing. They got a little busted play on that first drive that gave them a longer field goal, but you'll take that. You're doing great. And listen, it's drive after drive. It's 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. You get a 3rd and 9. Jim Knowles sends the house. You rush everyone, and I agreed with that call because they came right at him. J.J. McCarthy throws a YOLO ball. Cornelius Johnson, who, by the way, Michigan fans had hated, makes the catch. And, of course, Cameron Brown, that's where the play completely breaks down. Cameron Brown can't make the tackle in a one-on-one coverage situation, and it is just so demoralizing. If you're facing a team like Michigan, in the first half, Michigan could not run the football. You cannot allow them to get explosive touchdown plays. Even if they get an explosive play, that's okay, but, make sure they have to have a red zone offense. Michigan didn't have to have a red zone offense in the first half because they got back-to-back 70-yard touchdowns. Cornelius Johnson had 150 yards receiving in the first half and 2 touchdowns. Or I think it was 170. It is totally inexcusable. The second long touchdown to have Cam Martinez, no clue what's going on there in the game. But the secondary for Ohio State, guys, I don't know what to do. You know who I feel bad for? I feel bad for C.J. Stroud because it was so weird how Ohio State was moving the ball on offense, and then just something happened in the third quarter. Michigan gets the ball to start the third quarter. They end up scoring, and it's like Ohio State, it felt like they didn't even have a chance to do anything on offense. You know where the game changed? Guys, remember this. 24-20, Michigan is leading in the third quarter. Ohio State forces a punt. Emeka Egbuka fields the punt at midfield. Ohio State is down 4 points in the middle of the third quarter with the ball at midfield. Holding penalty, and G. Scott headbutts a Michigan defender, and it's 1st and 35, and then they ran the ball on first. Oh my God. Oh my, that might get Ryan Day fired right there. How in a game you're losing in the third quarter, it's 1st and 35, you have a Heisman contending quarterback. You don't run the ball on 1st and 20. That is one of the most inexcusable play calls I've seen in my life. There were several bad play calls. I thought the early 4th down, 4th and 2, if you're going to throw the ball, you need to target Marvin Harrison Jr. Cade Stover, he can't catch. My God, he has stone hands. We saw it again in the fourth quarter, and that they were trying to come back. They needed a touchdown. And Cade Stover on the third and 4th, 3rd and 5. Ohio State starts the game 4 for 4 on third downs. And then they don't convert another third down after that. And it was like they were getting really good. It was just such a weird game. They were getting really good push at the beginning of the game, and I don't know what they're doing. Once again, they completely botched the running back situation. Mayan Williams is simply too slow. If you guys go back and watch, he had gaping holes that were not taken advantage of because he's just too slow and he's dealing with an injury. You have two healthy running backs. I don't know what happened to Dahl and Hayden. They don't like him for some reason. I have no clue why. He should have started this game, or the transfer Chip Trainum, I think, who barely played, but he was looking good when he was out there. Who had, that was like his first run of the season, his first real meaningful run. They also gave Xavier Johnson a few carries here and there. I thought that was a good wrinkle, but overall, a total embarrassment. And now, I thought it was at least going to be a competitive loss there, but Michigan you've got the two 70-yard passing touchdowns, and now Donovan Edwards has two, I just watched the last one, 80-yard rushing touchdowns. So, guys, I think for Ryan Day, let's do the big picture now. Let me do my big picture prediction on Ryan Day and what's going to happen. They're going to give Ryan Day one more year. Everyone within the Ohio State program realizes Ryan Day is a total clown, but Ryan Day is going to leverage the fact that he has Dylan Raiola committed, who's the number one overall quarterback in 2024. He's going to leverage C.J. Stroud possibly being a top 5 pick. The only way I can see Ryan Day and Ohio State leaving or parting, it would be a mutual, I tweeted this out, they would mutually part this offseason and Day would go to the NFL. This is what I want to bring up that nobody knows about, and this is a really good time right now because this is another situation where a lot of people think Ryan Day is getting fired. Earlier this year, Ohio State had a game. I think they were facing Rutgers, and Ohio State was up 21-0. It was the 2 minutes left in the first half or something like that, mid-second quarter, and Ohio State burned their last timeout. They didn't get the play in quick enough, and they had 0 timeouts left, and it was 8 minutes left in the second quarter. And the crowd, Ohio State was up 21-0. The crowd started to boo the offense because they had burned all their timeouts at home, and Ryan Day turned to the crowd and mouthed F you to the crowd. So I think Ryan Day probably wants to leave Ohio State. He probably wants to, this is speculation, and we can talk about the Ohio State coaching situation, but the only things I can see Ohio State doing, they're going to give Jim Knowles more time. That was a total clown show by Jim Knowles. I cannot believe it. The one long touchdown to Cornelius Johnson, that is just a situation where I think it works out 9 times out of 10. It didn't work out that time, but other than that, I mean, it is big play after big play. It is inexcusable without Blake Corum what Michigan was able to do. And the defense clearly was not improved at all. And it's can somebody teach... I don't want to kill Zach Harrison because he was not the big issue. Can somebody teach Zach Harrison to stay in a pass rushing lane? I mean, these guys don't do anything. Zach Harrison, I think, is in his 4th year. He still has no idea when you're facing a running quarterback and you do a 5-mile loop on your pass rush, the quarterback is going to cut right up in the loop and run past you every single time. Zach Harrison does the same thing, and I don't want to kill Zach Harrison. It's not Zach Harrison's fault. These are young kids. They're trying. I also think the other issue is the inability to develop elite cornerbacks. J.K. Johnson is now in his 2nd year. He was a top 70 overall player in recruiting. He hasn't developed at all. He looks like he's still in high school. There's no muscle on him. And the same thing with Jordan Hancock to a lesser degree. I know he dealt with an injury, but guys, at this point, it's so ugly. And it got so, this is to the point where it's you can still make an argument for Ohio State to be in the playoff. The last thing we need is the Rose Bowl again. Another consolation road. Send Penn State. Let Penn State go. Let Penn State go to the Rose Bowl. That's the last thing this team needs is the Rose Bowl right now. But, now you have to kind of figure Ohio State did get trounced in this game, which is shocking considering they dominated the first half. They had 16 first downs in the first half. Michigan had 4. Crazy, and they lose by, it looks like, 22 points. That is a final score now here. There's no point in even watching it at this point because the game's completely over, but it is now final 45-23. Ohio State scores 23 points, and they lose by 22. Certainly, if you're a Michigan fan, great game by them again. I mean, this is, you can talk about them. For Michigan, it just comes down to just really, having trusting J.J. McCarthy. Shockingly, we saw J.J. McCarthy really struggle throwing the ball this year, and then he comes out and lights it up. That was his Heisman game. Now, obviously, he's not winning the Heisman or anything like that, but I do think C.J. Stroud, obviously, once again, is eliminated from the Heisman discussion. And I do want to say, I've been hard on C.J. Stroud. I have called him soft, but C.J. Stroud I feel really bad for because his Ohio State legacy is ruined. He is 0-2 against Michigan. He's had back-to-back Heismans where he's been the leader going into the final week of the season, and this has happened back-to-back seasons. And this game, it felt like this game was lost with C.J. Stroud just kind of standing there and being like, what's going? It just didn't feel like Ohio State was stopped. Like, again, I think Ohio State lost this game where they forced the punt. They were down 24-20. Emeka Egbuka makes a fair catch at midfield. You are starting at midfield, down 4 points in the middle of the third quarter at home. That is a great setup. And, they had the big run that got called back for holding, and then you had the G. Scott penalty, and it's 1st and 35, and Ryan Day calls a run play on 1st and 35. It's inexcusable. And obviously at this point, Ryan Day and the Ohio State coaching staff, nobody takes them seriously. It is a total joke. This is back-to-back years. They did the whole spiel about how this year is different for Ohio State. You had players within Ohio State kind of mock people like me who called Ohio State soft, and I said, listen, this is the same team. They're soft. Ryan Day is a bad play caller. Guys, the only real change I can see, unless Ryan Day says, screw this, I'm leaving Ohio State, the only real change I can predict is Ryan Day will not be calling plays next year. That will be handed off. I'm sure Ryan Day will influence it a bit, but he will not, in my opinion, be calling plays. So that would be the big change. When you look at the coaching staff, I think, the DB coach, they're all new, so normally they're going to give you more than a year. I think they might fire the cornerbacks coach, who I believe has only been there for a year. Again, these guys are really young, so it's like, do you fire them now and try and restart, or do you give them more time? Jim Knowles, I'm sure they're going to give him more time. Ryan Day, I'm sure the situation will be, it's very ugly. So what Ohio State is going to tell Ryan Day, and I might want to do a separate video on this, but what I think Ohio State's going to tell Ryan Day is, if you lose to Michigan again, you're getting fired. So you can either have that, or you can leave right now and go to the NFL. Those are your options. So that's why it's going to get so ugly for Ohio State. And we can talk about whether or not Ohio State can still make the playoff. I think it's a little bit more cloudy now that they got crushed so badly. It is shocking to see Donovan Edwards have 280. I mean, it's just, oh my God. I don't even know what to say about it. So, the one thing I will check, guys, I do need to see something. Wow, Clemson lost. The ACC is out. Guys, the ACC has been eliminated from the college football playoff. What Ohio State needs, they need Notre Dame to win. The only chance at the playoff, and I know people don't even want to hear it, but guys, let me tell you, the last thing you want to do is go back to the Consolation Rose Bowl. That's what the Rose Bowl should be called. It should be called the Consolation Bowl. Nobody wants that. I'm telling you, even if Ohio State gets in as the 4 seed and gets crushed by Georgia, you don't want to face frickin' Oregon in the Rose Bowl. That is the last thing this program needs. Ohio State, Ryan Day is a total clown. It's so bad. People want him fired. Maybe they do fire him. If they do, the choice is obvious in my opinion. You have to, what I would do, and I don't think this would work, but I would definitely hire Luke Fickell, or I would vet Luke Fickell, probably hire him, and then try and get Chip Kelly to be my offensive coordinator. I don't know if it would work. I think that team would be so lethal. If you get Luke Fickell, you're going to have to really get a good offensive coordinator, because Luke is more of a defensive coach. But it really just comes down to installing a new culture, and then people say, well, then you lose all the top recruits and stuff. And sometimes that's what it is. I mean, Ohio State is getting all the top recruits. Ohio State, I think when you look at recruiting, has like 17 out of the top 20 overall players on the field. They're more talented, for Ohio State. It doesn't matter. Michigan is better coached. They get their 3-star, their 4-star offensive linemen, and what an absolute joke this is. And again, the play calling, it's the same issue with the play calling, guys, with Ryan Day. How about running it? I remember a specific play where they were down. This was probably in the third quarter, and they run it like a toss sweep or a little pitch on 3rd and 3. Why are you running the ball, man? You have to give C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr. a chance. 4th and 2, you're throwing to Cade Stover. Was it a bad pass by C.J. Stroud? Maybe, but I don't know, guys. It felt like Ohio State was dominating the game, and Michigan had those 2 huge plays, and I was very optimistic coming out of the second half for Ohio State because, it looked like, you look at the first down yardage, you look at, the offensive line, defensive line won by Ohio State. It was so shocking. Blake Corum out of the picture completely, and I cannot believe that it turned out like that. So, once again, Ryan Day and this Ohio State team, you have Michigan, unbelievable coaching staff, just unbelievable, and certainly the better team. Certainly, not even close. I will say, you guys have to you have to give me this one. Michigan fans, you have to give me this one. That pass interference call when it was, what was the score? 31-20. Was it 31-20? I don't know. You guys know what I'm talking about. 3rd and 10. 3rd and 10. At the 13-yard line, J.J. McCarthy throws up a prayer. It was not, I've been saying it all year, you cannot bail out the offense on 3rd and long when the quarterback throws up a prayer. It was not even pass interference on Ronnie Hickman. He held his hands straight up. His hands were up. And that was one of the worst. And listen, Michigan deserved to win this game. That was a horrible call. Horrible. Even if you're a Michigan fan, people were saying, I was talking to Michigan fans and they were like, yeah, that's real bad. And listen, it doesn't affect the game. Well, it did affect the game because that made it, a 4-point swing, which really, that was from 20. I think that was when it was 24-20. And Ohio State would have gotten a stop and it would have been a 1-possession game because they would have had to kick a field goal on 4th down. Guys, it was real bad. Ohio State, nope, they don't deserve to win this game. Absolutely not. But even Michigan fans, they were telling me, they were saying, listen, this is terrible. Come on, guys. These refs have got to stop doing that. You have to have some nuance. You have to have some understanding. If it's 3rd and 10 and a quarterback throws up a prayer, you cannot call pass interference because a DB breathes on a receiver. You cannot do that. Let alone the pass being way up here, barely, it wasn't even catchable. So, or you could say he got his hand on it, but still, if you go back and watch it, it was so high. So guys, that was ridiculous. But I do want to I did not see the final stats on this game. And Michigan, guys, actually, it's a little bit better than I thought. Michigan did outgain Ohio State 530 yards to 492. Ohio State has 7 more first downs. They win the time of possession. The penalties for Ohio State, again, the 2 crippling penalties, the G. Scott penalty, which I think G. Scott has played his last snap for Ohio State. I think he's gone to the transfer portal. That penalty making it 1st and 35, and then you run the ball on 1st and 35. And then on 3rd and 10, the bailout of all bailouts, the Mona Lisa of bailouts. Come on, even Michigan fans, that is a horrendous call. Horrendous call. Go back and watch it. They showed it on Fox. Fox tweeted it out on their Twitter account. But the 3rd down efficiency, Michigan 7 of 16, Ohio State 5 of 16. Ohio State started 4 of 4, and then it went totally downhill after that. Of course, the rushing game, Michigan basically had 250 yards in the second half. Donovan Edwards finishes 22 carries, 216 yards, 2 touchdowns, a long of 85 yards. Let's take a look at Michigan's scoring plays. Michigan had a scoring drive, 3 plays, 70 yards, 1 play, 75 yards, 7 plays, 75 yards, 15 plays, 81 yards. That was a killer. 1 play, 75 yards, 3 plays, 92 yards. And then you take a look at the win expectancy, and of course, I mean, the game was freaking dominated in the first half by Ohio State, guys. I'm not just saying, I'm telling you, if you watched the game, it was like, wow, Ohio State is so much better, and it was a complete catastrophe. And again, total credit to Michigan. You know, what a big win for them. Cornelius Johnson finishes with 160 and 2 touchdowns. Emeka, gets 9 catches for 125. I know people were angry at the drops and things like that. Marvin Harrison did have a big drop as well. But this game was really decided by Ohio State's inability in their secondary early on to create separation and also settling for 2 field goals early. That cannot happen. I think Ohio State ended up with 2 touchdowns and 3 field goals. That's inexcusable. It's too many field goals. It's getting bogged down in the red zone. And then, of course, I think really what triggered everything was Ohio State on 4th and 2 really early in the game. I think it was 10-3 that pass to Cade Stover. Again, if you're going to throw the ball on 4th down, the ball needs to go to Marvin Harrison Jr. unless he's double-teamed. And if he is double-teamed, throw it to Emeka Egbuka or Fleming or run it. You cannot throw a pass to Cade Stover, who has shown weak hands. This is a converted linebacker, okay? I understand C.J. Stroud did not throw the greatest of passes. I get it. But still, this is situational stuff. But really, this was a total breakdown by Jim Knowles' defense, guys. I want to talk about, does Ohio State still have a chance to make the playoff? In my next video, it really comes down to Notre Dame. Notre Dame has to win. They have to win because this is a blowout and the committee is going to see this. But if I were to argue for Ohio State, it was kind of a fluke blowout because they only got outgained by about 30 yards, and Ohio State had 7 more first downs. I'm saying Ohio State's bad, but I'm throwing the facts out there. And Ryan Day right now, Gene Smith is going to go to Ryan Day and he's going to say, listen, you have 2 options. Number 1, you can leave for the NFL. Number 2, you need to beat Michigan next year. If you lose, you're getting fired. That is the ultimatum for Ryan Day. What does Ryan Day do? I don't know. It seems like he's pretty pissed off about coaching in college. He may leave, and then Ohio State says, Luke Fickell, come on in. Chip Kelly, you're the new offensive coordinator. And you still keep Jim Knowles and hope that he can maybe coach up some of these cornerbacks. The cornerbacks just have to put on muscle. Why does J.K. Johnson look like a 16-year-old high school kid in Ohio State's so-called great strength and conditioning program for 2 years? I don't understand that. It's like, look at Jeff Okudah's development at Ohio State compared to J.K. Johnson. It's like it goes to development. It goes to strength and conditioning. Jordan Hancock, I know he's dealt with injuries, but those are the 2 guys that are really supposed to be playing better. And then I thought the thing that was really on Jim Knowles playing, Cam Martinez there. He got turned around. That was so embarrassing against Cornelius Johnson. He got flipped around by 7 yards. He was flipped by the corner route. It was crazy. I was like, wow. At this point, if Ohio State doesn't get into the playoff, they need to let Penn State go to the Rose Bowl, decline the invitation, because the Rose Bowl is a consolation. It's disgusting. You can't instill this type of culture where consolation bowls, the Rose Bowl's new name is the Consolation Bowl. You can't be in the Consolation Bowl. But what a major win for Michigan. Michigan does own Ohio State. I have to embrace it. Ohio State is a mid-tier Big Ten team. They're worse than Minnesota. They're worse than Iowa. They're on the same level as Maryland, as Indiana, as Northwestern. That's where Ohio State is right now. That's how bad it's gotten for Ohio State. They've got one of the top 3 most talented rosters, and their team puts out performances where when you actually power rank the Big Ten teams, I would probably say Ohio State is like 7th or 8th at this point in terms of the power rankings. And Purdue is certainly ahead. Purdue's probably Iowa. These are teams that make the Big Ten championship. Ohio State, once again, not making it. And I will say for Michigan, I don't think they're going to play Blake Corum next week in the Big Ten championship game. That'll be an interesting decision, but I think they'll just roll with Donovan Edwards in that case. So a lot of people are going to be reacting to this. It's pretty crazy, but that is my instant reaction. Ryan Day right now an absolute meltdown, horrible play caller, no fight to the team. Jim Knowles' defense with a major second half meltdown, allowing 2 long touchdown runs. And Ohio State at this point on the brink of being eliminated once again from the college football playoff. Also, CJ Stroud, his legacy is completely ruined considering he is 0-2 against Michigan, and I feel bad for him because it feels like something weird happened in this game. Like, I think the G. Scott penalty ruined the season. Listen, nothing against G. Scott, but you cannot have that penalty. We're already at 1st and 20. We already have a 1st and 20. We can't make it 1st and 35, and then they make it worse by running it. Why are you running the ball on 1st and 35? It makes no sense. But that's the quick instant reaction to Michigan crushing Ohio State and winning 45-23.